This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyler, and today I have two guests for you. My guests are Shayna Ferm and Tracey Tee of Band of Mothers. Hello, ladies, and welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for
Great to
having
be
us.
here. Yes.
Thank you for coming. I was wondering, how am I going to simply explain to my listeners what Band of Mothers is? And I was thinking, what occurred to me is it's like Disney for moms. Everything you need in one place. It's like a podcast,
That's amazing.
a comedy show, an app. What else did I find? A market.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, we certainly didn't set out to be Disney for moms, but I love that. we we started 8 years ago just as a live comedy show for moms called the Pump and Dump Show, which was just at the time our babies were just born, and we just started it in a local bar. We're from Denver, Colorado, so we started it in a local bar for free just once a month, and it grew crazy fast. And we realized that there was a niche that we were obviously providing, or like, a need that we were filling for these moms. And so then Tracy and I grew it and started touring it across the country in 2014. And in that time, really grew the Band of Mothers message alongside it, kind of organically, and started all the other things because it became our business. And we knew that you really can't just have one revenue stream. Um, and so we wanted to provide all of these ways to support moms. Tracy, does that feel like a good summary?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I love about Pump and Dump Show, what I've learned about it is how that was also multifaceted. It included music and comedy and presents and wine, and it was like the night out for moms. And all the moms know we've all been there, stuck at home with a kid and just being like, I can't anymore. I need to get out and have a glass of wine and laugh about all of this. So that's what it was.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We really, we tried to make it, as much as it was a comedy show as it's at its core, we tried to make it an event and something really special for moms so that they just felt seen and heard. And, the beauty about live comedy, and especially our show, is that there's just so much power in being able to gather together and laugh about the same things we all have in common. It makes you feel not so alone.
And then COVID happened. COVID happened.
Dun, dun.
And you guys, because you guys would fill up whole auditoriums full of moms who wanted to laugh together, and now they couldn't anymore. So this is why you started your podcast, Band of Mothers.
Yeah. So basically we had been growing the business, and we had gotten off the road so that Tracy and I could produce the shows and focus on the bomb market and focus on the app. And the podcast became a very natural progression. And yes, it was absolutely fortuitous to have the partnership with Warner Brothers and be able to launch on Wondery, because our live show world was completely shut down. So it kind of happened at the best time, and it's been a really interesting shift for us. But also, it's hard to say that we wouldn't have done it if the show was still running at the moment, but it certainly has given us the brain space to focus on something creative and new, and not always necessarily about babies, because the show is really about when those early days where you're just struggling. And the podcast is really about, being a 40-year-old mom who wants to know how to, what makeup to buy and how to deal with your finances. It's like we do all kinds of lifestyle issues on our podcast just through the lens of being moms, which is very different than the show. So it allowed Tracy and I to be creative in a different way and still support moms the way that we commit to.
And still laugh about stuff. I mean, we still keep our same sense of humor, obviously, our same, we're sort of defiantly dedicated to being honest and raw and real and peeling back that veneer that I think so many moms struggle with in this digital world. That's this comparison that she looks so pulled together online and she's got the matching outfits with her children and she's making dinner every night perfectly and all those things. And we don't ever pretend that we're any of those things because we're simply not. And so we hope that we provide a landing spot for moms to gather in their own way and listen to conversations and stories from other mothers from all walks of life, like Shayna said, from all professions and people who stay at home, and everyone has a story. And so we just infuse our same point of view that we had at the Pump and Dim show, but go deeper with kind of one-on-one conversations. So it's been really beautiful.
Before we jump into talking about our moms, I want to ask you guys to tell my listeners the story about you touring. I was listening to that. I was like, oh my God, only women can do this. Because I heard how you had little children at home and you would bring kids to preschool and then hop on a plane. Tell them more about this. It's quite fascinating. It really shows what moms are capable of.
Well, first of all, we so appreciate you because we've been telling people that for years and nobody has ever seemed to care. So thank you.
I was so impressed. I was listening to it and I was like, oh my God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we so appreciate that. Yeah, it was nuts. We used to we would have a show either once a week or two in a week because we could never really feel like we could be gone longer than that. And we would get everybody ready and set, and Tracey would even make food for her family and put it in the freezer. I never did that. But we would drop them off, get on a plane, fly into some city, get to a hotel, change our clothes, go to the club, do the show, hug and talk to moms afterwards for hours, drink a little wine, get back to the hotel, and then, have to get up at 3:00 in the morning, 4:00 in the morning to catch the first flight back so that we could be there for pickup and just make it as easy as possible on our families. I can't even believe we were so considerate, Tracey. We probably could have given ourselves a little more leniency.
And I love the end of the story. And then after all of that, we would pick up the kids from preschool, come home and cook dinner as if nothing happened.
As if nothing. No, it's true. They don't care. They don't care that we've just been awake for 36 hours straight. They just want to know what's for dinner, right? And what time bath time is. So yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, it sounds a little insane that we did that for sure, but it worked. And, we're grateful that we had supportive families. And it's funny when your kids are so young, it's so hard to leave them. So hard for the moms. But looking back, I don't think our kids really cared at all. So, just a little shout out to moms. If you're nervous about going on a business trip or a trip or leaving your kiddos even for a night away, when we all open up, when they're young, it seems like they're sad and I'm sure they might cry, but they really bounce back pretty quickly. So, yeah.
I left for 3 weeks. I had to go to Europe for 3 weeks when my son was 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly. I was so nervous about this, leaving him for 3 weeks. And he just loved it.
Yeah.
He had so much fun with his dad because his dad found a place in his office's preschool for him. So he thought he's going to work with dad every day.
Aww.
And he went into this new preschool at the office and he felt so important. And, they bonded and it was 3 weeks and he was fine. So yeah, let's encourage moms to dare to take their time when they need to.
For sure.
Let's talk about moms. Have your mom seen your shows?
Oh yes. Many, many times.
Yeah, they're really supportive and we're so lucky to have their blessing, considering like that we're not always that polite on stage.
Who wants to go first? Tracey, do you want to tell me about Mama Lynn?
My mom, Lynn, she is a Colorado native. My family is, I think, third or fourth generation Colorado natives. So she's lived here her whole life. If I could sum her up quickly, I would say she's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. She is deeply intelligent, and she ended up dropping out of college before she got her degree, but certainly in another universe, I think she could have had a flourishing career as some sort of intellectual educator, researcher, I don't even know what, but she's just always buried in books and really passed that on.
Did she drop out because she got married, or
She
were
dropped
there other
out.
reasons?
Yeah, she was getting married, and her mom was actually really sick, and her mom died
Okay.
when my mom was 21. And I actually just found out, and I didn't really realize it. Her mom's mom, my grandmother, died when her mom was 10 days old. So we have a little history lineage of moms leaving early. And so I definitely grew up sort of, once I hit my 20s, I was sort of terrified that she would get sick and leave us too. And thank goodness she has not. But it's always just sort of been in the back of my brain. But she, so she and my dad started dating in the 8th grade and were together their whole lives.
In 8th grade?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really
That's
young. Yeah. And stayed
That's
together.
love, huh?
Well, no, they got divorced.
Oh. In which grade?
They got divorced after 25 years of marriage. So they split up actually right before I got married myself. And I think it was just, they were absolutely, I guess you could say a victim of circumstance in the times, just their sort of traditional upbringing. I don't think they felt like they could get divorced, even though I think there were many red flags that they weren't the greatest for each other. That being said, I had a really great childhood. I had wonderful parents. She was a stay-at-home mom, but she wrote 2 novels while we were home. She was always being creative, always, like I said, studying. And I was really blessed to have a really stable upbringing, and she's an amazing cook, and she taught me how to cook and pass that on to my sister and myself. And she was kind of a hippie before her time. We lived out in the country, and we had chickens, and she had her own garden, and she was very natural and wouldn't let us eat a lot of sugar and kind of all the things that are in now. I was raised to be, and then resented it for a long time. And now, of course, I'm the exact same way with my daughter. So, yeah, she's wonderful.
How did she deal with a divorce at that age?
It was really hard. It was a hard divorce. I think it was many decades of stubbornness on both their sides. And I think if they had just released that they were just better apart and learned how to forgive each other and looked back and said, you know what, we raised these 2 great kids. We had a really good life despite it. Now we've got the last third of our life to live however we want. I think that would have been a lot better. I just don't think that either one of my parents were sort of prepared for that kind of emotional state. So it was really rough. It was not pretty at all. And she, being sort of codependent on my father in terms of financially, it was hard to just sort of be out on your own. And we lived in the same house for my whole life for 25 years, like I said, out in the country, and that got sold. So there was a lot of change,
How is she now?
She's great. I mean, she's thrilled to be alone. She'll never remarry or date.
Yay, Mom.
Yeah, that ship has sailed for sure. And she's very devoted to her family, and that's what brings her joy. And thankfully, my sister and her kids and husband we all live within 10 miles of each other. And we still do a lot of the things that were important to us as a family growing up. Like we have Sunday dinner several times a month, and we rotate between her house and my sister's, and cook big meals, and a lot of gathering around the table and eating and talking very loudly over each other. And, she's involved in her grandkids' lives, and is a great friend, because we're old and we shipped along with the times.
No, we're not old.
Oh, you're
I have
right.
to correct
Okay,
you.
that's fair. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
Let's learn from her. I'd love
Okay.
you to share her lessons. What have you learned from Mama Lynn? What do you think are the most important things?
Well, I loved this question because I carry her lessons with me constantly. The first one I would say is always drink the champagne. That's just sort of one of her taglines. And the first time she ever said it to me, I was young. I think I was maybe in high school, just old enough where it wasn't horribly inappropriate. And she and I were at some sort of distant family member's wedding, and it was just she and I that went. I don't know. My dad and my sister must have been busy. And we walked by. It was the first time I ever saw one of those champagne pyramids, with the glasses all filled, and it was so beautiful. And there was a fancy, man in a tuxedo there. Ladies, would you like a glass of champagne? And I looked, and my mom was like, yes. And I think it was an afternoon wedding. And so, not being very familiar with alcohol and drinking, I was like, no, we can't do this. What? And my mom turned to me and she says, Tracey, always drink the champagne. And, and then she just went on to just tell me, like, life's too short. And when you have a chance to celebrate, do it. And I've never, ever forgotten it. And I always drink the champagne if it's offered. And I think it was a really great lesson. We really celebrate. We celebrate all the time. We celebrate so many things. And she really taught my sister and I that if there's a win, there's no shame in cooking a big meal and getting the good bottle of wine out and just selling it. Or, you know what? Sometimes it's just good to celebrate a Tuesday and make it extra special. And she really taught us that. And I try to remember that always, so that we just, as a family, always just try to make the days special and the special days even more special. So always drink the champagne.
I love this lesson so much. When I read this, I was like, yes, because my first reaction is champagne. I love champagne. I just love drinking champagne. But then when I thought about it and understood what she really meant, it's also one of my favorite lessons from my mom in my life, that it's too short not to celebrate every possibility you have, to just enjoy it.
Yeah, it really is.
Any more?
And the second one, she wrote to me in a birthday card. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, so I was in my early 20s, sort of starting out on my own. I was acting and didn't have any money. My husband and I, then boyfriend, we had like no money to our names. And she sent me a card in a really, really good jar of eye cream that was like horrible. It was like La Mer or something. And she just said, happy birthday, and then in the card, she just said, never skimp on the eye cream. And she has always just taught us both to take care of yourself, and that there's certain things that you just don't skimp on. You've got to take care of your hair. You got to take care of your skin. And not that you need to go overboard. She's certainly never had plastic surgery, and she's not particularly, adorned, and she's never worn a lot of makeup. Neither do I. But she just always said, like, just go for the quality rather than the quantity. And to this day, I follow that rule too. So yeah, I guess she was into self-care before it was even a thing. I didn't even realize it.
But it's so important.
Yeah.
And how do your eyes look?
Any wrinkles? They're not that bad. I think they look pretty good for my age. I slather that stuff on daily for sure.
And then you send me a third one.
I did. And so the third one just sort of goes back to what I had said at the beginning, is that you're just never too old to learn something new. And she's just constantly diving into new, like just researching on her own, just for the love of knowledge. When I was growing up, everybody in my family would read. And one thing that was really cool about my parents, but my mom in particular, is that they never treated books as precious. And she always let me, if there was a book I wanted to read in the house, even if it was one of those fancy sort of leather bound with the gold on the edge of the pages, she would just, if I had to read that for school, she would let me take it to school and mark it up. And her whole philosophy was just that books are for learning and they're not to be made into objects.
Oh, I love that so much. I have these discussions with my husband. He likes to keep his book like in a perfect condition. I love that.
No, they're so much more interesting when they're all marked up and beaten up and, water stained. They have history to them. And she was always so cool about that. And also if there was something that I wanted to read, she would let me read it. It wasn't like, oh, you're not old enough, or, oh, it's not good. Like, it was like, yeah, go for it. Tell me what you think. And I really appreciated that, because I am constantly buying books. My daughter's constantly reading books. We're constantly reading. And I love learning about new things. And I think she really passed that on to me.
Thank you. Thank you to Mama Lynn.
Yeah,
Shayna.
This was so fun.
Yes, Hello. It is fun. We learned some very, very cool lessons. I'm very excited about this. Let's learn from Mama Marcia.
Oh, okay. So my mother, her name is Marcia. She grew up, she was born in Chicago, and she moved to Los Angeles when she was in, I think, the 6th grade or sometime around there. She actually ended up meeting my dad in junior high school as well, in middle school, when she was 15. And they started dating then, and they are still together. They just had their 50th anniversary. She came from,
congratulations.
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. She also had kind of a rough upbringing, and really she was pretty close with her father, but not close with her mother, and actually stopped speaking to her family, her mother and her 2 sisters. Let's see, I was 12. So what's 43 minus 12? A long time ago. My father comes from a little bit of a rough situation as well. So I think they found each other and basically kind of raised each other and kind of grew into this just couple who really are very codependent, but it's very, very beautiful. And they have very similar interests, and they're very similar people. And so that was her, upbringing and story. She just kind of found my dad, and they've been very, very happy. And she now that, she's an interesting lady, because she's coming from that kind of an upbringing. She somehow had a life that I feel like when she looks back, she's very proud of. She's very into the finer things. They lived in Denver for a long time, but they also, now they live half of the year on an island near Antigua called Montserrat. And they left Denver they were here for the other 6 months, but now they live in Palm Springs, California. So they get to be in the desert and on an island. And yeah, that's kind of her background.
And what did we learn? What can we learn from her?
Yes. So the very first thing I always think of when I think of my mother, and it's so funny because I don't know if it's just because she's older now or not, but she also says this all the time. like everybody says that I do this, but she always really loves to dine. So even if we were at home, the table is set, it's always nice. She takes her time. She knows how to dine. She knows how to make things nice. That is one of her strong suits. And she, it's just a lesson that I always still with my family, even if we're going to eat in front of the TV, the kids set the table and we always just try to make it nice. And that is just something that I always think of my mother when I do.
Are you the one who likes cooking? Did you learn cooking from her?
Nope.
I know one of you doesn't cook.
Yeah, that's me.
No.
I do cook.
Because I wanted to connect. I wanted to connect dining with love for food, but obviously, no.
Yeah, okay. No, to be honest, my mother was a terrible cook. She didn't teach me cooking at all. She
maybe that's why that's what my mom told me. She's like, just make the table look beautiful and then the dinner can be late. She's like, first.
It was always about the table versus the dinner, for sure. She's gotten better. She's gotten older, had more time. I think no one ever taught her. So we just don't have, again, her mother wasn't, very supportive or involved or kind, actually. And so I think she just didn't have those, just like me. I never learned how to cut up a chicken. I had to have my Greek landlady teach me one day when I was trying to surprise my husband with a birthday dinner. So, but yes, it always looked delightful. The table was nice. So, so that's the lesson number one. And then the second one I was thinking about, and I love this podcast because it makes you think about these things, was that when I was growing up, she would allow us to have an R&R day, she called it. So when it just seemed to a point where we were just burned out, you know how school and homework, or I was in ballet, so it was like too much ballet, or I was just tired, or I just didn't feel right, or she was always like, do you need an R&R day? And I would be like, yeah.
You need to translate R&R for the international listeners.
Sorry, rest and recovery. A rest and recovery day, she called it, which now is just like hashtag self-care day, right? But it was like, sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you need, like, my parents are she's a big napper. Like, these things that we just kind of never allow ourselves to do. My mom made important to me when I was young. And I feel like that's a really healthy, cool thing. And I, as hard as I am on my kids, like, yeah, you're not getting a day off school. That's because they're in 3rd and 5th grade. It's not that hard. But like, when they need a break, I can feel it. Like my mom felt it. And I always thought that was kind of a cool thing.
But do you still do that for yourself? Do you give yourself a break when you need
no,
it?
No.
So wait. Where's the lesson learned here? You better go back home and learn that lesson again.
You're so right. It's very true.
I certainly do chill. It is very true. But I certainly do know how to chill. And that is, Tracey and I talk about this all the time. Like, I think I'm pretty good at balance. Like, I work very, very hard, but I also know how to, at the end of the night, just zone out and watch a TV show with my kids. Like, and I think that's kind of the ingrained part of it, like finding balance. And so that's where I kind of translate that into my current life. But,
okay.
And then the last thing that I can think of is, I wrote affectionate love, because I feel like that is something I'm very good at with my kids. And I get that from my mother. No matter how things were growing up, there were a lot of, I'm trying to find the right way to say this, but no matter what happened, I always knew that my mother loved me deeply. Like, she's always been very good at showing love, even if it's just snuggling. And she's great as a grandmother. She's amazing at that with my kids. She's still amazing at that with me. I'm very good at that with my family. And I feel like it's kind of rare to grow up or feel like that kind of warmth. And she was very, very loving, affectionately, like loving in an affectionate way. And I really appreciate that. And I feel like that's something that I definitely give my kids. Like, I'm terrible at, sitting down and doing crafts with them or teaching them how to cook or those kinds of things. But I could snuggle and giggle all day long with them. And that is definitely from my mother.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to jump into the trick question. I want to ask Tracey if she can think of anything, if there's anything that her mom was not able to teach her, something important that she's like, oh, I had to learn this myself.
Yeah, no, it seems almost cliche, but the truth is I wish she could have taught me more about sex, for sure. And I think, or just been comfortable with talking to me about it. Again, I just think both my parents were just brought up by their parents where it was, you never spoke of it. I think when I was in college, as a joke, just because I was so fed up with everyone being so prudish, I blurted out penis at the dinner table one time, and everyone freaked out that I even dared to say the word. And it's so funny because one thing I always loved about my mom is she was always real comfortable being naked around me and my sister. And we never felt like we had to cover ourselves up, which I always thought was so cool. But we never talked about kind of our bodies or sex or even, our periods or any of that stuff. And I think it would have been great for both of us if she had felt like in freeing for her, if she felt like she could have been open about that with my sister and I.
Mm-hmm. As one of my guests said, if my mom talked to me about sex, then I wouldn't have to go through trial and error, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah, I think you probably do that anyway, but it would have been nice.
It's true.
It would have been nice to not spend all those years before I was married, terrified that my mom might find out something that, that I was a human woman, so. Yeah.
Shayna, do you have something that you wish your mom taught you?
Yeah, I think my mom has struggled with confidence for most of her life, and that comes from her childhood. And as much as she has always been such a supporter and a believer in me and my talents, I think that learning how to stand in your own power is something that she's rarely able to show. I think she can be insecure. She's one of the smartest people. Like, we love Jeopardy in our family. My husband and I still watch it all the time. But she, if you sat down with my mom in Jeopardy, she knows like every answer. Like, she knows so much stuff, but she would never have the confidence to say that or to really hold power in the way that I think she probably could. And so I'm finding in my 30s and 40s and being a mom myself that this is just something I kind of wish I'd been shown and introduced to a little bit more in my earlier years, because it's so important for me to teach it to my kids. And it makes me a little bit sad that I don't know if she ever has found that.
Wow,
if that makes
thank
sense.
you. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, we learned a lot.
Sure
Before
did.
we recap, wow, this was fun. Before we recap, because I feel we really need to recap and repeat all the lessons we learned, is there anything else you guys would like to add or talk about?
I will say, my mom, I think our moms are similar in the idea that maybe they didn't know their own power. But one image I'll never forget of my mother is we had this chicken named Norman, or it was a rooster named Norman that was a horrible, horrible, mean bird and ended up chasing my mother around the house. And so image number one that I'll never forget was walking outside and my mom has a broom and the rooster is chasing my mother and she's like swinging the broom screaming. And hours later, Norman's head had been chopped off with an axe by my father. And my mom took that bird, boiled a pot of water, took that water out into our courtyard, plucked that bird and cooked it and made homemade noodles from scratch. And it was the best chicken noodle soup with dumplings that we ever had. And we called it Norman with noodles. And it was like one of the best meals our family ever ate. And if that's not being a badass, I don't know what is. So yeah, Norman with noodles.
And I'll just say that my mom, because she does not give herself enough credit, I want to give her a little bit of credit now, growing up the way she did and then meeting my dad so young and really the partnership that they have. She's also one of the most organized humans on the planet, and again, makes everything nice and has done such an incredible job. And I don't think we give women enough credit for this because it's so anti what the world is now. But she has been such a partner for my father, and and really his personal secretary. And that brings her joy for like so many years. I think it's something that she should be really proud of, and that she feels good when she takes care of things for him. And really, it's like, I don't think she gives herself enough credit for being this just like really, really great partner. And he respects her in that way as well. And I think that's rare, to be with somebody for 50 years and to find the beautiful parts of a relationship like that. I think she's really good at it. They're madly in love. She's very attractive. There's like all these things that are just kind of wonderful about them as a couple. And so that's something lovely about her.
Yay to partnership.
They really are adorable, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, guys, let's recap. I'm going to start with Tracey. So I have, as first, always drink the champagne, meaning celebrate life. I have never skimp on good eye cream, meaning take care of yourself. I have, you're never too old to keep learning. I love this love of knowledge. And Tracey, I wrote down another one as you were talking as lesson number 4. Release your partner when it doesn't work. Can we have that as a lesson?
You know what? That you're so right, because she definitely taught that to me. And she never carried the same expectation for my sister and I that she did, like how she ran her marriage. So you're so right. She was always really good about that when I had breakups. She was really supportive, and I love that lesson. I completely learned that from her.
It's so important. I love it how you talked about that. And then something you wish she taught you is the same old topic of sex.
Yep.
Shayna, as lessons from Mama Marsha, we have dining nicely. So setting the table, making it nice and eating slowly. Then I have rest and recovery, the R&R, allowing yourself days off when you need them. And as the third lesson, I have affectionate love, showing love, which I love. And I love how you explain how it then trickles down through generations. And as something you wish she did teach you was confidence, how to stand in your own power. Love that. Did I miss anything?
Yep. I don't think so. So. That was the recap for sure.
This was fantastic, ladies. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you too. This was a real treat, and what a beautiful way to honor our mothers in their beauty and their flaws. And I'm really grateful to have this time to reflect on her. It was really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for sharing them. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.